everyone. Welcome to this session. My name is Edina from Nigeria, and our host is Eugene Addo. We're taking on the next topic on ICT 2024. That's from local realities to global futures, inspiring global citizenship education in Japanese classrooms. So I will hand over the floor to Eugene to introduce himself, and
Uh,
inspire us.
Thank you very much. My name is Eugene. I'm from Ghana and I teach at Soka University in Tokyo. And I'm honored to be here today to lead this session. Thank you. Um, could I see my slides, please? Can the sharing begin? Thank you very much. Could we move to the next slide? Sorry. Thank you. Sorry. All right. So my presentation is going to start with background. I'll give some background information about myself and then my students. And I'm going to end with some broader implications of some of the content for global citizenship education. And finally, a conclusion and call to action. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Can we move on to the next slide? All right. So, like I was saying earlier, I'm from Ghana. I've been living in Japan for the past 5 years. Currently, I work as a lecturer of English at Soka University. I usually like to introduce social issues into the class discussions I have with my students. Next, please. My students, on the other hand, are usually Japanese, with the exception of this year that I have one Korean student. They usually are all Japanese and are between the ages of 18 to 20. They come from three different departments. I teach the law department, nursing, and the letters department. They are not particularly motivated about English or international affairs and issues that concern other countries. And the reason for this disconnect would be the backdrop of this presentation. Can we move on? Can we move on to the next one, please? Oh, I can see the slides again. Sorry. Text the part. I don't know. Like my slides have disappeared. If you could bring them back on. Okay. Sorry. I'm going to try sharing my screen one more time. Let's see. I Can you confirm if my screen moved? Okay, maybe I can present from here. Sorry about the delay. So let's look at the reason for the disconnect. The first reason is rooted in history. So for over 200 years, Japan practiced an isolationist policy called Sakoku policy. Sakoku simply means closed country. During this period, Japan self-isolated from foreign interaction and influence because they believed foreign interaction of any kind was going to contaminate their unique culture and identity as Japanese. Even though this policy ended many years ago, the effects still persist today, and we'll see this throughout this presentation. The second reason is rooted in culture. So, Japanese culture has this element of conformity where there is an insider and an outsider. Um, as a result, there is a strong belief among many Japanese people, including my students, that the acquisition of English dilutes one's Japaneseness, and concepts such as English education or global citizenship outside concerns are not issues of relevance to Japanese society. This notion creates resistance when you try to introduce um, concepts such as global citizenship, or even when students come to English class, they are not really motivated to learn or participate. Again, Japan is a highly monocultural society, so multiculturalism or immigration do not really align well with the cultural ideals of the country. So, compared to other G7 countries such as the US, UK, and Germany, Japan only has 2.7% of its population as immigrants or foreigners. Again, there is a strong social pressure and hesitancy to stand up. Sorry, in Japan, there is a famous saying that the nail that sticks out gets hammered. So many Japanese try to conform to social expectations. Therefore, fluency in English or having aspirations to travel abroad might be seen as being overly ambitious. Okay, individuals who try to pursue these dreams might be viewed as distancing themselves from their society and culture. This is another reason for the disconnect in my classroom. And next, we'll look at government policies. Now, the first government policy hinges on education. So, there is a strong emphasis on academic requirements, like standardized test scores are prioritized a great deal over practical communication. So, there is a strong emphasis on grammar and translation over communication in English classrooms because students essentially study English to pass entrance examinations to high schools and then to the university. The English curriculum therefore neglects um, English communication, as all lessons and activities are tailored towards the entrance examination, which is highly mechanical in grammar and translation. Next, we have a lack of foreigner friendly policies and systems. So, the government is investing heavily in English education. At the university, I get a salary, I get a research budget, and I get bonuses for going around to conferences and presenting my research. The university also have a self-access center that has a different staff running a different budget, all to boost students' efforts in the acquisition of English. However, when you go to Japanese public offices and you try to access services, you get only information provided in Japanese. You try banking, for instance, you try opening a bank account, and banks will refuse you on the grounds of um, not having forms printed in English or not having information in English to give to foreigners who want to open bank accounts. I experienced this 4 times this year. And with regards to healthcare, you'd have individuals who would go to hospitals, and then the hospital staff and doctors largely do not speak English. So um, there is a great difficulty in communicating your health concerns or troubles to the doctors, and in turn, getting doctors' advice. And then next, we look at government immigration policy. So as we'll be saying very soon, Japan's population is declining. As a result, there is a great need for foreign workers. However, foreigners working in Japan, by and large, are treated as temporary laborers, and there are really stressful paths to visa renewal. There are some people who've been stuck on 1 year visas. So every year they face strong apprehensions as their visa terms get closer, not knowing whether their employers are going to offer them a new contract that will help them renew the visa, or whether they are going to leave the country. And this stand in sharp contrast with a country whose population is declining, and who goes around telling the whole world that now they are opening up to allow foreigners to come work. When you get here, the situation is quite different from what you hear in the media. A next reason for the disconnect is economic. So Japan is a developed country. Such standards of living here are very high. This harmony at home usually prevents some individuals from seeing um, the realities of life outside Japan. People get so comfortable, they don't care about what happens in other countries. Again, there is this culture of lifetime employment in Japan. So when university students get to the third year, companies come to the campuses and organize events to recruit these students. So as early as third year in university, before their final year, students get jobs and offers. And when they graduate, they move on to work for these companies. And as a result of the lifetime employment, students feel obliged to stay loyal to these companies. Therefore, this structure inhibits the need for international exposure, because here you have a job that has promised and guaranteed you employment for life. Why would you bother learning a language first you don't use at work? Why would you bother thinking about international affairs when all your life is here, and you don't need opportunities outside? So, with these problems that we've seen so far and the reasons for them, how do we make global citizenship relevant for students in my context? I believe the best way to approach this is to appeal to students' interest first. You appeal to their interest at a local level, then you push them further to engage in global affairs at the international level. So let's look at how I did this. One major problem currently in Japan, as I mentioned earlier, is the aging population and declining birth rate. If you look at the chart we have here, number of births have been indicated in red, and you can see that over the years it's been falling and dropping. Deaths, on the other hand, indicated in light blue, have been rising. So more people are dying than people being born. Marriages, again, in purple, they are also falling. Now, what are the implications of this phenomenon? Well, first, when a country that is an economic power is losing uh, its workforce and essentially its population, their economy is going to grow weaker. Many years ago, Japan was only second to the United States in terms of global economy. They were the second largest economy of the world. And then after a couple of years, they slipped down to the third largest economy, with China overtaking them. At the beginning of this year, Japan slipped down further again, going to the fourth largest economy, and they were overtaken by Germany. So you could see the trend in Japan's economic decline. As this is happening, we're going to have less and less jobs, because you need people to create jobs. You need people to keep an economy vibrant. When you have a weak economy, you can pay workers well. This has been happening in Japan for the past 30 years, where salaries have also been declining. If you get really lucky, you get your salary being stagnated at the same level. You don't get increments despite the number of years you've accrued working experience. I try to liken this to my students' life. For example, in the nursing class, all of them are studying to become nurses. Um, you need people to open up a hospital. You need people to have patients. So if a city, for instance, like let's say Tokyo, for example, Tokyo has hypothetically, let's say 30 million people, and as a result, we need 300,000 hospitals. If the population of Tokyo declines to, let's say, 20 million or 25 million, that means we wouldn't need 300,000 hospitals again. We would need less, and that means people are going to lose their jobs. So I ask my students, you are here, you've been given this opportunity to learn another language that could help you, and you don't want to engage in it. What happens when you don't get a job or you get a job that pays less? Would you be stuck with this option? Whereas you compare other countries like Nigeria, doctors and health workers there are able to escape like unfavorable working conditions there, move to other countries and get a better life. I put this forward to my students. Would you be able to do this when a time comes where the economic conditions in this country get really dire? Again, as the population is declining, there will be a demand of foreign labor, and this has already started. However, it's very easy to bring in a foreigner or an immigrant, very easy to advertise jobs and have them come over. The most important thing, and I believe this is what the Japanese government wants, is for these immigrants to stay, work in Japan, contribute to the social security system, pay taxes, and so on. But when you have foreigners coming in who are unable to open bank accounts because of language, again, this is a language that um, the government is investing heavily, but they hardly use it. You wonder why. Such foreigners will have a tough time living here when they can't communicate in public spaces with public officials, accessing social services. They would try to look for opportunities elsewhere. And I try to put this forward to my students. If you don't change your attitudes towards this class, you grow up into a society where you'll be working and you cannot support the immigrant population that just arrived. Because if someone arrives in Japan today, you don't expect them to start speaking Japanese immediately. This in turn would lead to the employment of Japanese speakers of English. That if the students, like those that I'm teaching, change their attitude towards the subject, they might graduate and get jobs in such government positions to advance government plans. Again, Japan has regional tensions with its neighboring countries, especially China, and more recently with North Korea. All these three countries don't speak a common language, so it would be really necessary for students to or the Japanese citizens to be fluent in a bridge language. In this case, it's English. The government has already invested heavily in English education. I think it's necessary if students take advantage of it. So I try to draw the attention in class to how the relationship with neighboring countries could be improved if they have better channels of communication. Next, Japan, as a G7 country, has a role in global peace and cooperation. So this is an enviable feat, but it cannot be achieved if you cannot engage on an international stage. Again, you can do so in communication through a language such as English. And I try to again highlight this in our classes. If you want to engage with the international world, you need to have a language that is accessible for millions of people. So in all this, what is my role as a teacher, especially as an English teacher, in appealing to my students' interest? Well, for starters, I need to improve their language skills. I need to help them improve their English speaking skills. This way, I have to engage them in a way that matters to them. So, right from elementary school to high school, students have already spent 9 years learning English, but many students come into university and they can hold basic conversation because of the focus on grammar and translation. Classes tend to be very boring for the students, and they in turn hate this English as a subject and the teachers that teach them. So I try to make lessons relatable to them and appealing to them. Essentially, I have to show students the essence of learning English because I don't think the Japanese government or the Ministry of Education has done a good job explaining to students in Japan why they have to learn English. They make it so much about the entrance examinations, and this, after some time, demotivates students. So I try to change this in my classes. Now, on one such occasion, we had a lesson. I would like to share some information about the lesson. So we watched a video. It was a YouTube video titled Japan's Population is Heading to Zero. This is a QR code to the video. After my presentation, I can share the link to the video, or I'll share my email and I can share other materials with you as well. So we watched this video, and the main points in the video were the population is declining and the government how this relates to they will need some language support, but we don't already have that in place because I think institutions and the government and society at large are just unwilling to use the language they've been investing in its education. So besides the video, I created a simple worksheet that contained discussion questions. They were in English, and then I had Japanese translations as well. If you look at question one, for example, I was trying to get students to identify the problem in the video. And two, I got them to think about why this problem exists in Japan. And then at three and four, I asked the effects of the problem and what they can do to alleviate this problem, or how the problem affects them currently and how they think it's going to affect them once they graduate and become adults. Okay. So this is the flow of the lesson. In the beginning, I group students into groups of 3 or 4. If you want to adapt this lesson and talk about a topic that is relevant to your context, you could do the grouping based on the number of students in your class. But 3 or 4 students in a group works best for me. And then I distributed the worksheets with the discussion questions. And after this, I had students work in groups and I let them. So we read the English questions, even though they had Japanese translations, to check if there was any vocabulary item that they didn't understand. And once that was out of the way, students watched the video and I added subtitles for low proficient students. And then once that was done, a student had some time to go over their notes in the groups and compare answers. Then we began the discussion and we ended the activity with conclusions and key takeaways. After this activity, some students some comments with their regarding their experience. Now let's look here. These comments have been unedited, so the sentences you hear, they represent the English skill and ability of my students. Keita here says, now I want to go study abroad in my next year. Essentially saying next year he wants to go study abroad. And I will study hard to get a high TOEIC score so I can go to Italy. Now, this is very monumental considering that in the first semester, when I first met them, the students told me they don't want to go abroad for any reason, study abroad or holiday, because all other countries are dangerous and not safe, and foreigners are dangerous. But at the end of this session, he seemed to have a change of mind and is considering going to Italy. So I think this is a big leap. Miyuki here says, I didn't know about this problem. Thank you for this lesson. I will study hard and become a nurse that can speak English in Japan. Maybe I will work in a different country. So the first part of her comment is awareness raising to social issues here. And then now she wants to be a multilingual nurse in Japan who could support foreigners working here. As we saw in the video that we watched, there were some foreigners who had a hard time accessing healthcare. And then finally, she says maybe she would consider working in a different country. So again, I started with saying we could overturn the minds of students like mine by first appealing to their personal interest. Then we can get them to be engaged global citizens at a higher level. It all starts with expressing interest in the outside world. Miyuki here seems to have achieved that. And then we move on finally to Shin. Shin said he didn't have a plan for the future with regards to work, but now he intends to work at the city office to help foreigners who come to Japan. Now, if you are a foreigner in Japan and you don't speak Japanese, one place where you get a lot of trouble is the city office. When you go there to talk about your pension or your taxes, you're usually met with staff that don't speak English. Occasionally, you get a translator, but they are not always there. And any day you are met without a translator, you really have a hard time communicating. And some staff tend to treat you as an inconvenience. Okay, so Shane here is trying to fill that gap by working at a city office, helping foreigners so that their lives will be much easier in Japan. So, looking at this activity I did in my class, you could have a similar activity. What would be the broader implication of such activities for global citizenship education? Well, first, I think we need to make learning relevant. Okay, so we could do this by localizing global issues and showing a direct relationship between student lives and things happening around the world. Next, multilingualism and multicultural element are the nature inclusive and tolerant mindset. So if you are speaking the same language with an individual, you tend to bridge the gap. If we speak the same language, then we are more or less friends. Then we more or less have something in common. If you introduce cultural element of one cultural society to another group, then they begin to see life from the perspective of the target culture. I believe when we include these in our classrooms, we'll be able to grow a new generation of students who are tolerant with an open mindset. And next, we need to prepare students for economic resilience. As we've seen in Japan, the economic landscape is changing. Therefore, students need to be equipped for a globalized economy where they could be flexible and adapt to any new setting or any new environment so that movement around the world could be accessible and within reach for all. And finally, we need to empower active engagement. By this, I mean we teach students to engage with community challenges, then through a global lens. This is going to inspire some action and leadership. So we take it from a local level, personalize it, and find a way to connect local issues and the personal lives of students to other people across the world. Finally, let's look at some key takeaways here. So I believe from the lesson and activity I had with my students, One thing we could do for students who are very inward looking is to bait them towards global citizenship with local or personal affairs. If you don't appeal to the personal interest of an individual that is so disconnected from the world, you might have a very hard time getting them to connect on a global stage. And second, we need to make such students realize that global citizenship is essential. It's not really distant as my students think. Global citizenship and English education are outside concerns. We need to let them know that there are benefits at the individual level and at the societal level as well. And I believe through relevant education, we can prepare our students for a world where they can thrive and make positive contributions, like Miyuki, who is looking to becoming a multilingual nurse with possibilities of working abroad sometime. Now, for educators, we can incorporate local global connections and cultural understanding and real world experiences in the classroom, like I exhibited in the activity I had with my students. And finally, we can encourage our students to view language and global perspective as tools for personal and societal growth, as opposed to viewing language in the Japanese context as a tool for passing entrance examinations. I would like to conclude my session with a quote from Martin Luther King that says, "We are all caught in a network of mutuality, and whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." This is a very impactful quote that I think any teacher here who has students similar to mine could share in class so that students get a renewed perspective. Thank you all for your time. This is my email, and these are my references. Thank you. If I'll be open to answering your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Um, I think we have one question in the Q&A from Koishi. It
Okay.
says, what kind of system do you follow at soccer schools? I've been interested in them, but I haven't had further details as of methods or maybe rubrics.
Um. Oh, thank you. Soccer has a humanistic approach to education because if you know, Soccer University is kind of affiliated with Soccer Gakkai, but this is not implemented across board. There are special courses designed to teach students soccer principles, but um, in my department and from what I know, we use a very general approach to education, so it's not really specific. I think I see many international students on campus, and they are really able to fit in easily when it comes to study. So if you're interested, I encourage you to apply sometime or attend some info sessions, and you have a really easy time assimilating. Thank you.
So this is the next question. I think it's still it's a follow up to the previous one.
Okay. So thank you, Koichi. All right, you're welcome.
All right. So thanks everyone for joining. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you very much.